Let me start with something that might shock you. The more you announce your plan, the less likely you are to finish it. Talking feels like progress. It isn't. We live in a world where everything is shared instantly. New goals, new habits, new dreams. I'm starting a business. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'll become fluent in English this year. We post it. We tell our friends. We feel proud. And in that moment, it feels powerful. It feels like something has already begun. But here's the dangerous illusion. Your brain often treats talking as doing. Research by psychologist Peter Gorwitzer from NYU found that when people publicly announce their goals, they are statistically less likely to follow through. Why? Because the brain releases dopamine when it receives social recognition. When someone says, "That's amazing," or "I'm proud of you," your brain experiences a small reward. Dopamine is the same chemical released when you achieve something meaningful. The problem is this reward arrives before the work. Your brain does not clearly distinguish between social recognition and real achievement. When you talk about your plan and receive praise, your brain partially feels like the goal has already been accomplished. This is called psychological completion. You feel progress without making progress. That is the illusion. You announce your fitness journey. People clap. You feel motivated. For 3 days. Then the motivation fades. You announce your plan to start a YouTube channel. You get encouragement. You feel validated. But validation reduces urgency. The hunger weakens. You've already consumed part of the reward. And hunger is essential for execution. Here is the deeper layer. When an idea is new, it is fragile. It is not yet identity. It is potential identity. When you expose it too early, you attach it to your ego. Now you are not just building a skill. You are protecting an image. You start caring about how you look instead of how you grow. Silence protects unfinished identity. When you stay silent, you allow your identity to develop privately. You experiment. You fail. You adjust. You improve. No pressure. No performance. No audience. Just growth. When you talk too early, you create a social contract before you have built personal discipline. Talking also creates a subtle mental shift. Instead of asking, "What do I need to do today?" you begin asking, "What do they think of me?" Your focus moves from execution to perception. And perception never built anything real. This is not about hiding in fear. This is not about being secretive because you doubt yourself. This is about strategic silence. It is about protecting energy, protecting focus, and protecting momentum. In this video, I will show you 6 powerful reasons why silence multiplies execution. Not because silence is mystical, but because silence reduces ego inflation, protects mental bandwidth, filters social noise, and strengthens identity before visibility. We are not building performance. We are building substance. We are not chasing applause. We are building capacity. If you want real power, you must understand what talking steals. Let's go deeper. Your plan is not weak because it is stupid. It is weak because it is new. Early-stage ideas are like cognitive embryos. They are not fully formed identities. They are possibilities. And like anything in its early stage, they require protection, time, and incubation. Your brain needs space to experiment quietly before it can stabilize a new direction. When you first decide, "I'm going to change," your nervous system is still adjusting. Your habits are still old. Your environment still sees you as the previous version. You are in transition. That stage is delicate. The brain develops new patterns through repetition and reinforcement. This process requires cognitive safety. But the moment you expose your plan to the public, something subtle happens. Your brain shifts from building mode to defending mode. Social exposure triggers defensive thinking. When someone asks, "Why do you want to do that?" your brain activates explanation circuits. You start justifying your decision. You begin preparing arguments. You mentally rehearse responses. This uses executive function, the same limited mental resource you need for planning, problem-solving, and disciplined action. And this is where mental bandwidth theory becomes important. Your mental bandwidth is limited each day. Every decision, every explanation, Every emotional reaction consumes executive energy. When you spend that energy explaining your plan, you have less energy to execute it. Think about it. You tell 5 people about your new business idea. Each of them asks questions. Some doubt you. Some give advice. Some criticize. Even if you remain calm, your brain is processing all of it. You replay their words. You imagine proving them wrong. You mentally defend your plan again and again. This is invisible exhaustion. Decision fatigue increases. Focus decreases. And when it is finally time to sit down and do the actual work, your mental energy is already reduced. Execution requires focus. Explanation requires defense. And defense drains. Now let's talk about the ego trap. When you announce your plan publicly, you create a social identity around it. People now see you as the person starting a business, or the person learning English seriously. That feels good. It feels like progress. But here is the problem. You begin protecting the image instead of building the skill. Instead of asking, how can I improve? You start worrying, what if I fail publicly? You may avoid small experiments because you don't want to look inconsistent. You may hesitate to pivot because you've already declared a direction. Your identity becomes performative. Performance is about how it looks. Growth is about how it works. In silence, you are free to be messy. You can fail quietly. You can change strategy. You can admit weakness. But once your plan is public, every mistake feels like a social threat. The ego wants to protect status. And ego protection consumes energy that should go into skill development. This is why many people stay stuck after announcing big goals. They are no longer building. They are managing perception. Now let's examine energy economics. Energy is not just physical. It is emotional and cognitive. Every conversation about your plan transfers emotional energy outward. You share excitement. You share doubt. You share vision. You give away internal fuel through words. Talking feels stimulating. It creates a temporary emotional high. But after the conversation ends, your internal drive is slightly reduced. You expressed it instead of converting it into action. Execution does the opposite. When you act in silence, when you wake up early without posting about it, when you study English without announcing it, when you work on your project without telling anyone, you build internal energy. Each completed task reinforces identity. Each small win strengthens self-trust. Self-trust multiplies energy. There is another psychological layer here. When you talk, you often receive feedback. Positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Feedback pulls your attention outward. You start calibrating yourself based on reactions. This fragments focus. But when you build in silence, your feedback loop becomes internal. You measure progress against your own standards. This preserves mental coherence. Silence protects coherence. And coherence increases power. Consider 2 individuals. One posts daily about their upcoming transformation. They receive comments, likes, messages. They spend time responding, explaining, clarifying. Their identity becomes social. Their energy spreads across many interactions. The other person says nothing. They wake up early. They practice. They refine. They focus. No applause. No explanation. Just repetition. After 6 months, the difference is visible. Not because one had better talent, but because one protected mental bandwidth. Remember this clearly. Execution requires focus. Explanation requires defense. When you defend, you dilute. When you focus, you multiply. Your early plan is fragile because it is still becoming identity. It requires repetition, not recognition. It requires discipline, not discussion. It requires inward energy, not outward validation. Silence is not weakness. It is incubation. Now let's talk about the real threat, other people's limits. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable, but important, other people's reactions. When you share your plan, you don't just expose an idea. You expose yourself to judgment, comparison, and projection. And most of the time, the reactions you receive say more about them than about you. Let's begin with projection theory, originally introduced in psychoanalytic psychology and later supported by broader social research. In simple terms, Projection means people attribute their own fears, limits, or insecurities to others. If someone once tried to start a business and failed, and you say, "I want to start one," they may respond, "That's risky. It probably won't work." It sounds like advice, but often it is memory. They are not evaluating your potential. They are remembering their pain. People judge from their own limitations. If they struggle with discipline, they assume you will too. If they are afraid of change, they interpret your growth as unrealistic. If they gave up on a dream, your ambition makes them uncomfortable. This is not evil. It is psychological self-protection. Now let's add another layer: status threat psychology. In social groups, there is usually an unspoken balance. Everyone has a role. The funny one, the quiet one, the ambitious one, the safe one. When you suddenly decide to grow beyond your old identity, you disrupt that balance. Growth threatens social stability. Research in social psychology shows that people often prefer predictability over excellence in their immediate circle. Not because they dislike success, but because sudden change forces them to reevaluate themselves. Your growth creates comparison. Comparison creates discomfort. Imagine you and your friends have always complained about your jobs together. It is a shared bond. Then one day you stop complaining and start studying at night. You begin improving your English. You talk less about problems and more about solutions. The dynamic shifts. You are no longer reinforcing the group identity. This can create subtle resistance. Jokes, sarcasm, doubt disguised as concern. Don't work too hard. Why are you acting different? You're changing. Yes, you are. But from their perspective, your evolution feels like a silent judgment on their stagnation. And when people feel judged, even unintentionally, they often respond by minimizing the source of discomfort. That is how status threat works. Now let's talk about closed-circle resistance, because this is where it hurts most. Sometimes resistance does not come from strangers. It comes from family, from partners, from lifelong friends. And their doubt feels heavier because you expected support. But understand this carefully. When people close to you resist your growth, it is often about identity preservation. They know you in a certain way. They feel safe with that version. When you change, they fear losing familiarity. They may fear losing influence. They may fear being left behind. Or they may fear that your growth will expose their own unrealized potential. This does not mean they hate you. It means your change forces them to confront themselves. And confronting oneself is uncomfortable. This is why silence is powerful. It allows you to grow without triggering unnecessary identity conflicts. You do not need to announce transformation. You can embody it gradually. Now here is the key skill: emotional boundaries. Emotional boundaries are not about cutting people off in anger. They are about protecting your internal state without attacking others. You can listen to doubt without absorbing it. You can hear criticism without internalizing it. You can accept that someone disagrees without feeling threatened. Protect without attacking. Detach without bitterness. Bitterness wastes energy. Defensiveness wastes focus. But calm distance preserves clarity. If someone says, "I don't think that will work," you do not need to argue. You do not need to convince. You can simply respond, "I understand your concern," and then continue building. Not everyone who doubts you hates you. Some are just protecting their own comfort. When you understand projection and status threat, you stop taking reactions personally. You stop shrinking to maintain social balance. You also stop hating those who do not understand you. Silence becomes compassion, not revenge. You are not building in silence to prove people wrong. You are building in silence to avoid unnecessary friction while your identity is still forming. But there is one more danger you must understand. Doubt can slow you down. Jealousy can distract you. Yet something that looks positive, something that feels supportive, can be even more dangerous. But even praise can be more dangerous than doubt. Now we arrive at the most subtle danger of all: praise. Criticism is obvious. Jealousy is visible. Doubt is loud. But praise feels warm, encouraging, supportive. And that is exactly why it can be dangerous. Let's begin with the difference between social reward and earned reward. When you complete something difficult, Finish a workout, build a project, improve your English fluency. Your brain releases dopamine as a reinforcement signal. That dopamine strengthens neural pathways associated with effort and persistence. It tells your brain, this behavior leads to progress. Repeat it. But when you announce your intention and receive praise before doing the work, your brain still releases dopamine. It feels similar to achievement. The difference is that no effort was required. Dopamine without effort reduces drive. Your brain is efficient. If it already received the emotional reward, it does not feel urgency to pursue the real challenge. This is why early applause often leads to motivation decay. You feel accomplished before becoming competent. You say, "I'm writing a book." People respond, "That's amazing." Your brain registers social approval. The urgency to sit alone and write chapter 1 decreases slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to weaken discipline. And discipline weakens quietly. Now let's talk about identity inflation. When others praise your intention, they begin to treat you as the future version of yourself. You're so disciplined. You're going to be successful. You're inspiring. If you are not careful, you start acting like that version before earning it. You begin protecting the image instead of building the foundation. Identity inflation happens when social recognition outruns real development. You feel like the disciplined person, but you haven't yet built disciplined habits. You feel like the entrepreneur, but you haven't yet built consistent revenue. You feel like the fluent English speaker, but you haven't yet trained daily conversation under pressure. And when reality does not match the image, motivation declines. Because subconsciously, you already consumed the identity reward. High performers understand something critical. Hunger must be preserved. Let's look at the silent discipline model. Think about elite athletes. Before a championship, they do not spend months announcing how strong they will be. They train quietly. They repeat drills no one sees. They endure boredom. They refine small weaknesses. They conserve focus. They reveal themselves on the field, not on social media, or consider a serious creator. They do not announce every idea they have. They draft, revise, delete, improve. They test privately. They build substance. When they finally publish, the work speaks with clarity because it has been forged in silence. Silence keeps hunger alive. When no one knows your plan, there is no early applause. There is no premature identity. There is only responsibility to yourself. That responsibility sharpens effort. It builds internal drive instead of external validation. Hunger builds greatness. Applause kills hunger. Now, this does not mean you must hide forever. Strategic visibility matters. But timing matters more. Share results, not intentions. When you complete a milestone, share the transformation. When you have consistent progress, reveal the evidence. When your identity has stabilized through repetition, visibility becomes amplification instead of substitution. This is the timing principle. Visibility after development multiplies credibility. Visibility before development weakens commitment. The difference is simple. In the first case, recognition reinforces discipline. In the second case, recognition replaces discipline. High performers are not addicted to applause. They are addicted to improvement. They understand that social reward can be intoxicating. And like any intoxication, it reduces sharpness. Silence keeps the edge sharp. It keeps attention inward. It keeps standards high. If you want to build something real, ask yourself, am I sharing this to build momentum or to feel important? That question alone will protect you from false progress. Because false progress feels like motion, but it produces nothing durable. Real progress is often invisible. It is repetitive. It is unglamorous. It is private. And that is why silence is not hiding. It is strategy. Let's close this with clarity, not emotion. This is not about proving anyone wrong. This is not about revenge. This is not about disappearing to create drama. The real shift is simple. Not, I will show them, but I will build myself. When your focus changes from external validation to internal construction, everything becomes calmer. You no longer need approval. You no longer need early praise. You no longer need to defend your direction. You wake up, you do the work, you improve one small piece of yourself. That is power. So here is a simple 30-day silent discipline challenge. No announcement. No public declaration. No dramatic posts about transformation. Instead, daily micro-action. Even if it is small. 10 minutes of English practice. 1 page written. 1 workout completed. 1 skill improved. Weekly self-review. Ask yourself, what improved? What failed? What needs adjustment? No judgment. Just measurement. Measured progress. Track real numbers. Time practiced. Pages written. Repetitions completed. Revenue generated. Confidence built. Let the evidence be private. Let the growth be internal. Let the discipline be consistent. After 30 days, you will not need to explain anything. Your energy will feel different. Your posture will change. Your speech will become clearer. Your identity will be stronger because it was earned, not announced. If this message resonates with you, choose action over explanation. Like if you choose execution over explanation. Subscribe to Inspire English Stories if you want to grow quietly but powerfully. Comment, I build in silence. Remember this, the loudest success is built in the quietest seasons.